from Washington, D.C. to share his thoughts. We have Jacob Kirkegaard, who's a research fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics, joining us. And Jacob, first off, your analysis on what you're hearing from the G20 summit.
Well, I think, first of all, it's important to note that this wasn't actually that surprising. I think it has been baked in the cards for quite a while that the G20 was not going to just basically provide Europe with more money before the Europeans themselves were to put more money on the table. So what I think we're seeing here is essentially sort of a shift from where perhaps 3 to 4 weeks ago it was more the market pressure that was driving European policy action. Well, now there is a gradual shift to political pressure from the rest of the G20 to basically put more money on the table. And I think that's a very healthy transition.
And wasn't it interesting that we saw a little bit more tension, shall we say, with the U.S. Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner being more outspoken, saying Europe, fix your own problems before you get cash from the global community?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, and I personally believe that Tim Geithner is right. I mean, there is more work to be done in Europe on the firewall. We shouldn't forget the fact that at the end of the day, Europe is a very affluent region of the world, so it's entirely appropriate for them to be, for the G20 to ask Europe to put more of its own money at risk before asking the global community to chip in. And the fact that the rhetoric perhaps have become a little more pointed, I think that's something, it's basically what you expect in these kinds of situations. The brinkmanship gets a little harsher, and it all is going to come to a head, both at the EU summit next week and then again at the IMF World Bank annual meetings in early April.
Yeah, so, okay, how much more money is needed, do you think? Because we're looking at, some are saying 750 billion euros and maybe the ESM. How much money do you think will be enough?
Well, I think in total the so-called firewall should probably be in the neighborhood of $1.5 trillion. And that sort of breaks down to, if we take the sort of modus operandi that have been used so far in the crisis, that Europe provides 2/3 and the IMF provides the remaining third, that means that Europe has to provide about $1 trillion. Well, so far the ESM has a capacity of 500 billion euros, but for that to go to $1 trillion, you probably need about 750 billion euros. So what the Europeans need to put up front is another $250 billion.
Okay, Jacob, quickly. So we have Greece with the second bailout package that was agreed to last week. Where do we go from here, and what's going to happen in Europe?
Well, I mean, the next stage in the European process is essentially the creation of this firewall, which, of course, will have a stabilizing effect and essentially help insulate Europe from potential further instability coming out of Greece. Because I think we need to be clear that despite the fact that another bailout was granted the country last week, we have a new election in Greece in April. Who knows what the government will look like after that election? And it may well be that the incoming government will be no better at actually implementing the IMF reform programs than the previous and current Greek governments. And if that's the case, we may well get to a situation where we actually need to rely on the new firewall in the fall.
Okay, Jacob, thank you so much for your analysis. Jacob Kirkegaard of the Peterson Institute.